We all know Natsuki Subaru is a hero, a somewhat humble and courageous man who will do everything to protect his friends and loved ones, even if it means he'll face death over and over again. Of course, regardless of the atrocities he faces and the painful deaths he endures, he'll always manage to overcome it and somewhat solve whatever issue is in front of him. But that isn't always the case. There are different versions of Subaru out there in different worlds who have failed to see the full picture, failed to overcome their own issues, and instead enforced their misery on others. They've lied, killed, and manipulated their way to the top, and only really one person has ever benefited from this, whether they like it or not. But which of these versions of Subaru has fallen the deepest to reach this end? Who has induced the most death and misery? Which Subaru is the most diabolical?
What?
You gonna wash your hands?
No, 'cause I'm evil.
Pride Root Subaru is completely overcome by his own pride. When he was first summoned to this world, the events we've come to know pretty much play out the same. He meets Emilia for the first time, helps her find her pendant, dies in the pub, respawns, returns to the pub, dies again. Now usually Subaru is meant to be incredibly prideful here, choosing to get the pendant on his own over and over again, thinking that he's got that main character energy. However, he's eventually meant to swallow his pride and choose humility, asking for help instead of doing everything by himself. However, in the Pride Ifrit, Subaru doesn't learn this lesson. Instead, he constantly tries to defeat Elsa on his own and dies over and over again, mentally breaking him from the pressure, and he becomes cold and ruthless. Subaru then witnesses Reinhard effortlessly dispatch Elsa like it was nothing, despite Subaru fighting a total of 80 times to achieve this. This Subaru is obviously in love with Emilia, a lot more than the original. He chooses to return to the pub over and over again because he intends to save her no matter what. The constant deaths breaking his mind, combined with his jealousy of Reinhardt's power, convinced him to gain his own strength through whatever twisted means he knows, which leads him to join the witch's cult. Within the cult, Subaru rises up the ranks very quickly and even befriends Betelgeuse. That's not all, he also gets into a business relationship with Roswell, with both their individual goals sort of aligning with each other. Last but not least, Elsa is his most trusted and capable asset. He chooses to spare her on that day they met, and she's sorta like his enforcer now. What makes this Subaru dangerous, however, isn't the witch's cult on his side. No, it's his scary determination and disregard for his own life. This Subaru is willing to die hundreds, if not thousands of times to achieve his goals. For example, he battled Betelgeuse over 400 times and Reinhard for an untold number. After all that, he wasn't even phased whatsoever. He doesn't purely rely on his return by death either. He plans ahead and uses whatever resources and advancements he can get his hands on, with the goal of dismantling anyone or anything that could pose a threat to Emilia. Starting with the witch's cult, he first had Elsa kill all the minions of Betelgeuse so he couldn't transfer his consciousness. When he went after Regulus, he made sure to cook all his wives first to weaken his authority of greed. Next, he went after the other king's candidates. Krush was already taken care of because of the white whale, which then caused the cat guy to break down mentally. Using certain techniques, I won't say, they basically made the cat guy fall in love with them, and then used the cat guy to getting close to Anastasia's greatest soldier, who happened to be acquaintances of the cat guy, to strike a critical blow. As you can see, this Subaru is completely determined to take down anything that gets in Emilia's way and path to the throne. He's killed several members of the Royal Guard, the witch's cult, brainwashed Felix, and more. When faced with his final obstacle in Reinhard van Estrea, he couldn't defeat them no matter what he did. So, he chose to destroy Lagunica's capital, killing many in the process, all to prove that Reinhard wasn't a hero and break him mentally. That, I would say, is pretty damn diabolical. When Rem was first killed by the mana-draining curse in Arc 2 that caused an immediate conflict with Ram, in which he tried to kill him, blaming him for his sister's death. Subaru was then left at a crossroads, had Beatrice protect him and run away, or jump off the cliff and try again. In this timeline, Subaru chooses not to jump and gets in a hectic battle with Ram. He's fueled by rage. Rage has been building up since he was unjustly killed by Rem and cursed over 3 times before. In his rage, he beats Ram to death, and then later becomes a figure known as the Purge King, and starts a criminal organization. This organization has many criminals of many kinds working for it, specifically Halibel and I don't remember his name, who are some of the strongest figures in the entire ReZero universe. Subaru here is incredibly ruthless. The rage he felt on that fateful day has turned into awful hatred that lashes out at everything around him. He once killed a merchant simply because he felt like it, and chooses the fates of others based on a coin flip. He's also kidnapped Frederica and Emilia, the latter of which is forced into becoming his maid. If she ever gets out of line, he has threatened to kill both her and her entire family. Emilia, on the other hand, is being forcefully kept as a therapy device he can go to comfort himself from all his horrible actions. Basically, bro thinks he's Tony Soprano, but how did they even get here? Well, that was by Subaru invading the Roswell mansion and killing nearly all its occupants, including Roswell and Beatrice. Subaru has become an incredibly notorious figure, one even Reinhard is eager to capture. I wouldn't say that Subaru is a genius or anything, but his return by death ability has essentially allowed him to look like a man blessed by luck, or a man gifted by future sight, making the most hardened of figures put all their trust in him. His organization could then operate entirely out of the reach of even the smartest Lagunica has to offer. Make no mistake though, this Subaru is a pathetic shell, afraid of his own reflection. He was so blinded by wrath that he no longer cared about anyone around him, and became increasingly paranoid. That's why he had no qualms about starting a criminal empire and killing whoever even looked at him a certain way. In the end, when everything he built came crumbling down, he crawled right back to the figure that helped him start this downward spiral, and accepted their embrace. In ReZero Arc 4, Subaru is put into one of his most difficult situations yet. He not only has to save the people trapped in the sanctuary from the incoming White Rabbit horde, but he also has to save the residents of the mansion from multiple assassins. Worse yet, it's a Monday, so Garfield is especially murderous. During all this, Subaru finds himself participating in his final witch tea party. It is here that Echidna presents him with a tempting offer. She'll help him navigate the most effective paths to achieve his goals, but in return, she seeks to derive pleasure from Subaru's pain each time he utilizes his ability. Blinded by his desperation to save others, Subaru neglects rational judgment and disregards the caution shared by the other witches. This reckless choice leads him to experience over 100 million deaths, transforming him into a ruthless figure who exploits his power for trivial reasons, showing no fear of death or even concern for the feelings of those around him. In the end, he manages to save everyone, but at what cost? He's cold and unfeeling, especially to himself. Every day of the week has turned into a Monday, so Garfield is now incredibly depressed all the time. Beatrice was forcefully taken out of the library she vowed to protect, and now she's incredibly depressed all the time. Emilia was unable to complete the sanctuary's trials by herself, and thus couldn't come to terms with her own emotions and sense of identity, and now she's incredibly depressed all the time. Reinhard was abandoned by Felt after Subaru convinced her to drop out of the race, and now he's incredibly depressed all the time. I think you sense the theme here. Yes, despite Subaru saving everyone, they're all incredibly miserable, as Subaru robbed them of their own agency. The only people who are incredibly depressed are Roswell and Ram, but even Ram is clearly miserable. Subaru clearly notices how unhappy everyone is, but doesn't really care all that much about it. Why would he? The Emilia camp is more powerful and capable than it's ever been. Subaru has achieved all this through the help of Echidna and the abuse of his ability. He's incredibly meticulous with his plans and will off himself straight away if it means getting the most ideal outcome to any situation. Just to get Reinhardt on his team probably took hundreds to thousands of attempts. He even offed himself just to know the weather for the day. All this while Echidna watches from the sidelines, amused at his own misery. This is a Subaru who isn't really evil, but has completely disregarded his life and the autonomy of others to help further Emilia's aspirations. But at the end of this whole journey, he is destined to become a cold and emotionless man who has nothing really left to live for. But at the end of the day, despite everything they've done, there's one common theme among all of them, and that is their love for Emilia. She's basically the main motivating factor for a lot of their behavior, and at times she's the last link to their sanity. However, in the Gluttony F route, that isn't the case at all. In fact, she's dead from the very beginning. This is due to Subaru losing his memories in the halfway point of the arc. He's essentially reverted to a version of himself right at the beginning of the story. This in essence causes a crisis in his mind. He hears stories about the original Subaru. He sees the way people look at him, talk about him, put their faith in him, and it breaks him. He cannot be the person he's meant to be, or be there for the loved ones he doesn't even remember. That is until he learns about the Book of the Dead, a catalog documenting the lives of people who were once alive in incredible detail. With this, maybe Subaru can finally learn more about himself and all the great things he's done in heavy detail. That way his brain can sorta just forcefully remember and bring back his memories. In order to read the Book of the Dead, the target needs to be dead. You know exactly where this is going. With the help of Shala, Subaru begins massacring everyone in the Watchtower, and it doesn't stop there. As he learns more about other allies or acquaintances of Subaru, he hunts them down and kills them as well. Entire towns, a city full of people, it doesn't matter. He even creates an elaborate plan to kill those who are particularly clever or powerful, such as when he flooded an entire city upon finding out how formidable Otto could be. He's completely delusional as he hallucinates figures like Emilia and Petra, encouraging him to keep killing. He seems to have this idea that when everything is finished, the real Natsuki Subaru will come back and return everything to how it once was. Now, which Subaru would I consider the most diabolical? Well, it's kinda tough to say because we don't know absolutely every atrocity they've committed, but I'm leaning towards Gluttony being the most evil. This Subaru has committed mass murder on several occasions. First with the water city of Prestella, drowning everyone for essentially no reason, as he only really needed to kill 3 to 4 people. He then massacred an entire village and only left one person alive because they didn't know him. He goes on a killing spree throughout the kingdom, feeling absolutely no remorse for what he does, creating elaborate plans to maximize the most deaths he can. To him, it's all necessary because, hey, the real Subaru will fix it all in the end. Coming in at number 2 is the Pride If Subaru. He's also a mass murderer, but actually takes pleasure in those he kills. Everything to him is only a tool to further his goals of helping Emilia rise to the throne. He doesn't care if you're a royal candidate or a witch's cult member, a grieving catman, or the victim of abuse. He's created the perfect and most vile plan to take you down, and he will die thousands of times to achieve it, even if others have to die in the process. Third would be Wrath If Subaru, but I actually think he's just as evil as a Pride version. I only put him slightly lower because I feel a bit of pity for him. They are clearly someone who is miserable every waking moment and are incredibly paranoid at everything around them, believing that everyone is out to get them. In the end, he seems to embrace this misery in a literal and metaphorical sense. Last place would go to the Greed version. He definitely isn't anywhere near as evil as the others, but he isn't a shiny beacon of good either. He and everyone around him is incredibly miserable. Every day is relived thousands of times, all for the smallest of inconveniences. Even if he's successful in the end, I'm unsure it'll all be worth it in the end. It's just sad and depressing. All I'll say is, thank God Subaru learned the right lessons in every arc, because we are so close to any of these versions of him becoming fully realized.
Patching together, continuing to form its shape. Patching together, continuing to mold its shape. Patching together, continuing to fill in the colors.